Pickle, let's go to the hotline. Let's talk a little college football here with our senior college football writer here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, a man who's been chasing down this Jimbo Fisher story for the past 3 days. We're joined by Mike Craven. Mike, have you rested at all?
Yeah, oh yeah. I don't sleep much anyway, so I'm doing all right.
I want to know first and foremost I know you've obviously been covering A&M for quite a while. You know this program pretty well. And we had always been getting mixed messages out of College Station as far as the future for Jimbo Fisher. When the news kind of broke for the first time on early Sunday morning, I'm curious, like, what your initial reaction was.
I was proud of Texas A&M, to be honest with you. From what I had heard, it was a matter of when, not if they were going to wait until after the season. They were talking about the money situation, but I don't think the money was ever as big of a factor as it sounds like, because when you see $76 million, it seems like a lot of money because we're all poor. But to those people, it's just not that much money. They really only had to come up with about $20 million. SMU came up with $100 million in a week, a couple months ago. So it can be done at these high levels. As soon as they had lost to Ole Miss and they weren't going to get to 9 wins, they weren't going to compete for an SEC West title. The writing was on the wall, and it was just a matter of kind of how Texas A&M was going to do this more so than if they were going to do it.
So then let's talk about the timing of it, because there are 2 more games to play, and really 3. They are bowl eligible now. There's 3 more games to play. They should beat Abilene Christian, and then they'll be underdogs against LSU. 7-5 feels like the most likely scenario heading into their bowl game. I guess my question would be, why now? Why here heading into a game against Abilene Christian instead of waiting till the end of the year or waiting till the end of the regular season? Why now with the decision to fire Jimbo Fisher?
It's roster management. The early signing period has changed college football in a way that I'm not sure we completely grasped when it was announced and when it was introduced. You cannot wait until December to hire a coach anymore and have 6 weeks to keep that class together or add some guys or bring some guys that were recruited to you or committed to you at the previous spot. If you hire somebody in mid-December, 90% of the best athletes in high school football are gone. And that's before we even talk about the transfer portal and trying to keep your team together and giving yourself time to recruit those guys in the portal before the January semester starts. And so to me, it's all about recruiting and roster management and not having 2024 be a lost year. We saw this with Joey McGuire at Texas Tech when they fired Matt Wells. And some of that as well is you don't want the coach to get hot and make the decision harder. If A&M wins out, which they absolutely could, LSU's a beatable team this year. If A&M wins out with Jimbo Fisher there and they're 8-4 and they've won 3 straight and they're playing good football, all of a sudden it gets a little bit muddier. So you can go ahead and do that going into a game against Abilene Christian where you're not going to need a lot of concentration, right? Like having a distracted week of practice probably isn't going to cost you against ACU if you're A&M. So it was probably the right time to do it when you look at the early signing period, the transfer portal, and who their opponent is on Saturday.
Talking to Mike Craven, our senior college football writer here on Texas Football Today. Can involve the conversation at #TF Today. All right, so when we look back, when the book on Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M coach, is written, and it'll be quite a book, but when it's written, what do you think is going to be ultimately the undoing? I mean, it's easy to say he didn't win enough, which is true, but I'm interested in just the why. Why do you think the Jimbo Fisher experiment, failed? There's no other way to put it. There was a goal, they didn't reach it. Why did the Jimbo Fisher experiment fail?
I think he's just a coach that the game passed him by. I mean, football moves really, really fast these days, and he was great at Florida State. When he had top quarterbacks, he was awesome. And, all of a sudden, it's 10, 15 years later, the portal, the transfer, the NIL, all that kind of stuff. I just think offensively, he wasn't the same coach. He used to scheme his way to victories when he was in his prime. He was a great offensive coordinator, a great play caller at Florida State. But if you listen to a lot of those Florida State media people and some of the fans there, they weren't that hurt that he was leaving. And that's usually, a big sign. And so I just think his prime is behind him. He did great with talent acquisition, but the scheme, especially offensively, just wasn't enough to then take them to that Georgia, Alabama, level, LSU level, and that's what they're paying for. Like when you're paying somebody that much money, when you're paying the roster as much money as A&M is, you want to be Alabama and Georgia. A&M was more Mississippi State, right? Arkansas during his tenure a lot of times other than the pandemic year, and that simply just can't happen.
Mike Craven, our senior college football writer. So now the question turns to the future, and there's you've got a list up on TexasFootball.com of candidates that you think would be the best fits here, as far as Mike Elko is concerned at Duke, Dan Lanning at Oregon, Jeff Traylor. I'm interested. They're all saying the right things. They're all saying, I'm happy here. Just being not linked to that job means that we're winning big here, and I'm happy about that. We all know that's lip service, and that if somebody backs up a Brinks truck, that these guys are going to go. I don't want to ask you, to make a prediction, but who do you think is most likely to be the head coach at A&M next, and what do you think the timeline looks like for a hire?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy at Dave Campbell's. If somebody wants to give me $1 million, I'm probably going to listen.
Right.
And that's kind of where all these coaches are. I think if Jeff Traylor gets an interview, it's going to be hard to not let him be the head coach of Texas A&M, right? He seems like a perfect fit to be the A&M coach. Ross Bjork at his press conference on Sunday talked about trying to find their R.C. Slocum, somebody that'll be there for a while, somebody who will be a culture fit and build this thing out. I mean, just being around Traylor and being in the state and knowing high school football, like that sounds exactly like him. I don't know if I trust the A&M brass and big money donors to do that. I think the ones who are really into college football understand what Jeff Traylor is and what he would bring. I'm not sure all of them would. They would just see him as the UTSA coach. So maybe he's a stop away from doing that. If I had to put money on it, I think I would go Mike Elko because of his connections at A&M. The fact that he's hireable right now, I think that makes him a better fit than Dan Lanning just because of the timing. Like Lanning's in a college football playoff chase. All the reasons I said earlier of firing a coach early go out the window if you can't hire a guy until after the national championship game. I think they're wanting to keep this roster together because they know it could be good in 2024. And so Mike Elko, with his experience at A&M, with his roots with a lot of the guys on the roster, he would keep some of the staff. He would keep the roster more intact than I think any of the other guys would. And so for that reason, I think Mike Elko is probably the best odds right now.
Well, and you've got another piece up on TexasFootball.com. You've basically taken over the entire site about this topic, and with the upcoming coach carousel, where Jimbo Fisher. There's one opening right now. There's 13 FBS coaches in the state of Texas. There's one opening now. You write on TexasFootball.com, you think there could be as many as 7 programs that enter 2024 with a new head coach?
Yeah, I could get 8 if Houston opens
Wow.
up. I mean, I think the coaches on the high. I mean, A&M's already opened up. I think Rice could open if they don't get to 6 wins. I think UTEP will open after the season. Obviously, we got to watch what's happening at Baylor with Dave Aranda, even though I don't think they want to fire Aranda. They want him to give them a reason to keep him. And then, of course, Houston could get weird. If they end up 4-8, who knows what the Cougars do? They've been a little combustible with their head coaches over the last decade or so. So who knows there? So that's 4 or 5 potential firings. And then you got to look at the jobs that may open. Like Sonny Dykes took the TCU job a few years ago, and that opened up SMU. The same thing could happen. I mean, Jeff Traylor is in for a few jobs. He's going to be a name that's floated with a bunch of jobs for what he's done in San Antonio. I think Rhett Lashley is building himself into a candidate that has potential, especially in the SEC. He played at Arkansas. He was at Auburn. He's been an offensive coordinator in that conference. And then, it's hard to ignore what G.J. Kinney is doing at Texas State. He's proven that he'll leave a place after 1 year if the opportunity is right. He did it after Incarnate Word. He did it as an assistant coach 4 or 5 times before getting into Incarnate Word. So if UTSA was open, I'd imagine they called Kinney. If SMU opened, I'd imagine they called Kinney. And so I think there is a way where we get to 5 or 6, 7, 8 openings this year and an unprecedented amount of turnover in the state of Texas.
He's Mike Craven. He's our senior college football writer. You can hear him on Republic of Football. You can hear him on Eyes on Texas. You can hear him on Aggie War Pod. You can hear him basically everywhere, and see his fine work on TexasFootball.com. Mike, appreciate your time, my friend, and go get some sleep.
Absolutely. Everybody can blame you for that amount of Mike Craven access.
That's
so
exactly right.
You can take that.
Entirely my fault. Ishmael Johnson gets some blame there too.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye, Mike. There he goes.
Later.
Mike Craven, senior college football writer here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, talking some coaching carousel across the state of Texas with the first spin coming from College Station with Jimbo Fisher's firing. I think I agree with you. I think I agree with him. I think Mike Elko probably makes the most sense. Like it probably ticks the most boxes.
Well, it's also like I don't think my mic is.
Yeah, your mic's not on.
Test.
There you go.
Test. There we
There
go.
you go.
I also think that a portion of that too is just the fact of like there's been so much uncertainty around the program forever. There now is like one tangible thing of, hey, that guy was successful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a familiar face.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We will of course keep you posted every step of the way at TexasFootball.com. Hey, thanks for watching this clip here on YouTube. If you like this kind of stuff and you want more of it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, you can watch us live every weekday at noon at TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, or here on YouTube. And if you want more of the best coverage of football in the state of Texas, check out TexasFootball.com and become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider at TexasFootball.com/subscribe.